Hey there, Retro Games fans. So we just picked up the new AT Games Legends Flashback Retro Gaming Console. So what's interesting about this console is it actually includes a whole bunch of arcade games in it. Things like a 1942, Dig Dug you'll recognize, Lock and Chase, Mappy. And those are the arcade versions. Rally X is on here. But it also includes some console games like Megaman, Megaman 2. So it's an interesting mix. It includes 50 games right off the bat. So let's actually just kind of unbox this thing and take a look at what we get inside. So we've got an instruction manual that is pretty straightforward. Now, if you've ever seen their Sega Genesis flashback units, it looks almost exactly the same thing, minus the cartridge slot. And in fact, the controllers basically are their Sega Genesis 6-button controller as well, with a 9-pin connector. What's interesting about this console is that it includes the console, the controller, and an AC adapter, but there is no HDMI cable. So in order to connect it to the HDMI port on your TV, you do have to get your own HDMI cable. But interestingly enough, there is an SD card slot on here. And we're going to learn in a minute what we can do with that SD card slot. So let's actually go plug this sucker in and fire it up and see what it looks like. All right, so we've got the Legends Flashback here, and let's just take a look at the main menu. So you can feature games. Interesting to see which ones are featured. You know, 1942, Burger Time, Dig Dug, Galaga, etc., etc. But let's actually just take a look at all games A to Z. And then this is interesting. So it's got a selection of arcade games and console games. So the arcade games, these are ports from the arcade version. I don't know if this is running MAME or something else. But then the console games, it's a mix of NES and Sega Genesis games. So for example, Judge Dredd is the Sega Genesis version, same thing with Champions World Soccer, but Mega Man 1 and 2 are the NES versions. So let's just take a quick look at, let's see, menu systems. Let's take a look at Mappy. Mappy's always been one of my favorites. So one thing interesting about this is there's no controls on the controller here to insert coin. You actually physically have to go and press the button on the console, try that again, to go and insert coins. So I can insert, 1, 2, 4 coins here using the control pad. We're just going to insert 1 and then start to play. All right, let's see. Interesting. There definitely seems to be a little bit of a sound lag. And that's not my recording device. That does actually seem to be on the system itself. Yeah, so like, look, when I capture, the sound plays just shortly after it should. That's interesting. For the most part, I mean, this looks like the arcade version that they've emulated here. And the visuals and the music are good. There definitely just seems to be a little bit of a delay. You can see when I grab an item or when I bounce. It's just like a quick split-second delay on the sound. Let's try a different game. So again, if I want to end this game, there's no way to pause or to get back to the menu screen from the controller. You actually have to hit the button on the console. And here you can at least, you could save games. So there's different slots for saving games, kind of like the NES Mini. And let's see, how do I get back? So we'll quit game. Let's go try something else that everybody knows, like Dig Dug. Let's see. All right, we'll give Dig Dug a try here, and see if we get the same sound delay on Dig Dug. All right, so let's insert my coin. Insert coin, press start. Let's see. I believe we are getting the same sound delay. Again, it's very slight. But like, I feel like the sound kicks in just a split second after I hit the button. This one might be a little bit harder to tell on. Alright, let's try a different one. Let's see. Oh yeah, there's also a Scanline Filter. Let's see what that looks like real quick. Nope, that didn't do it. I'm not sure I like having to go to the console every time I want to insert a coin. And the... oh yeah, that does not look good. I don't understand why people like Scanlines. Alright, so let's try loading a different game. Let's see what happens here. Alright, what's another one that's easy to tell? Galaga. That one should be pretty easy to tell if I fire and we're actually getting the sound effect or not immediately. So let's see. First of all, let's go in here. Turn off that Scanline filter. Go insert a coin. And start. Okay. Oh yeah, same thing. Come on, hit me. Somebody hit me. Yeah, it's just a slight delay. And it's probably not that big of a deal. I don't think most people would notice it. But being very familiar with these games, probably notice it a little bit more than somebody else, but okay, let's go take a look at one of the console games. Like I said, this menu system, it's not the most responsive in the world. Back to the menu. Let's go over here into console games. We'll try some Megaman. So at least I could start that from the control pad. That's good. We'll go to Iceman stage. Why not? Start. That's right. Alright, let's just see if we get if it still looks good here. Everybody loves ice stages. Let's see. Yeah, again, I feel like it's just so slight. Okay, because usually when you pick up, so you watch, usually you would get the sound immediately when you pick that up. And here it's just slightly afterwards. So again, I'm probably harping on something that's not that big a deal. But like I said, the system looks pretty good. And yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, it seems to play just fine. Again, it's some slight annoyances like having to go to hit the console every time you want to go to that menu. What is interesting about this is it does have an SD card slot on it. So let's take a look and see what we can do with an SD card. We've just downloaded a new firmware upgrade. I'll put the link in the description. And this should, in theory, jailbreak the Legends Flashback so we could add other ROMs onto it and play some new games. So let's see what happens. I get the SD card thing on the menu, which it seems like I cannot select it yet. So let's go and actually put some ROMs on there and see what happens. Alright, so we did put some games onto the SD card, and unfortunately our findings are not going to be exactly what we want. So I loaded Aladdin, Sonic, and Toe Jam, and for the most part, as long as it's a Sega Genesis game, these do seem to load just fine and will most certainly play. So, ooh, this one seems to have sound issues. Oh yeah, the sound definitely seems to be staticky, maybe even running a little bit fast. Let's see. Not sure if this is the ROM or if it's an issue with the system. But it definitely seems to be playing a little faster and the sound is a little bit crackly. Alright, let's try loading something else. I did try loading on some NES games, some arcade ROMs. None of them show up on the menu. Let's take a look at Toe Jam and Earl and see what happens. Toe Jam and Earl seems okay, so maybe it was just the Aladdin ROM that I had. So I'm going to have to do a little bit more experimenting with this to see if it might have just been a bad ROM that I have, which I don't think would be the case because I've used that ROM in several other places and it seems to have worked just fine. Alright, so I'm going to try one other thing. Alright, so it would appear that the console only likes files that are either .bin or .md, which would make sense because that's what the Sega Genesis emulators usually use. But I went ahead and tried renaming, for example, the Sonic Sega Master System ROM to .bin, and basically what happens is it doesn't load up. It comes up and gives you an error. And I did the same thing trying to rename an NES, an NES file and a Super Nintendo, and basically it just says you can keep waiting, it's not running, press A to go back to the main menu, and then it just kind of comes back to the main menu eventually. So I think the verdict here on the Legends Flashback is if you're looking for a quick plug-and-play system that has some interesting arcade games, with that little audio lag aside, this is probably fine. But if you're looking for something that could actually be kind of a more all-in-one system, hoping to jailbreak it and add some other ROMs, again, your best bet is probably just going with a Raspberry Pi and not picking up something like this. I mean, again, if you like the games that are on here and that satisfies you, this was $44. Not a huge investment by any means, but to me, I probably won't get a whole lot of use out of this because I can play all these games on my Raspberry Pi and a lot more, and also in 1080p instead of 720, and I don't really get the audio lag, and the menu seems a little bit wonky. So there you have it. That's what the Legends Flashback is.